Kiss my aesthetic, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship.
Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. On today's episode, I am covering a topic that you guys have requested through the Facebook group. So plug for the Facebook group. It's totally free. Same name, Kiss My Aesthetic. And I like to post in there pretty regularly and see what topic you guys want me to cover that will help you the most. I know a big audience that we have here on the podcast and in the Facebook group are fellow designers. And my podcast is my way of giving back to you guys and sharing a little bit about how we do things so that you can build a better business and feel more creative. And all that we ask in return is that you help spread the word about the podcast, honestly. Share with a friend, post to your story, write a review. If you've learned anything from us ever by listening to this podcast, I would really, really love it if you'd shoot us a DM with some of the favorite things that you've learned. Or shoot us an email, podcast@mkwcreative.co. Feel free to nominate yourself to be a podcast guest, but we're getting off track. Really, the purpose of today's episode is to help educate you on ways that you can share your projects and get the most leverage out of them to help you attract more similar projects on social media. And the way that I want to talk about this episode is actually via case study. So as you're listening, if you're not driving or doing anything else dangerous, go back over to our page on Instagram, mkwcreative.co. And I want to tell you about how we've changed recently our social media strategy to really deep dive on projects that are our big case study projects, our big kahuna, the big fish, right? And the one that we've really tried this new approach with, which worked quite well for us in our reach, was with the Piano Ci rebrand, which is the Italian property management company rebranding that we just rolled out on social. So in this episode, I'm basically going to explain what the different types of posts are and why we made those posts and what we're hoping that they will do in the long run to attract more people to our brand, more people to our services, etc. So if you want to follow along visually, head on over to the Instagram account and we'll cover it there. So we had just wrapped this branding project with Piano Ci. This to us felt like the ultimate dream project because the project came about as I booked one of their properties for my 30th birthday. I was messaging them on Instagram, trying to tag them. The house itself didn't have an Instagram, but the property management company did. And we kind of stayed in contact over DMs. And I said, listen, like we've taken a bajillion photos. Like I'd be happy to share them with you if you want to use them on your socials, and just kind of kicked off a friendly conversation that turned into 6 months later, them signing on for rebranding with us, which was amazing because I was already a customer of their company and understood the experience, and to put my brand design hat on, saw opportunities to improve. So we took on this project. We started the branding in January. We've wrapped it by mid-March, excuse me. They worked on the website and then we were able to fully hand everything off by May. And now on social media, we have a lovely whole flood in our feed talking about this project. So our strategy for Instagram and TikTok has shifted slightly in that we used to just post about a project when it was finished like 1 or 2 times, right? And then we were posting new stuff. And we were always like, I wish like we need new content, or we were cycling through stuff and kind of saying the same thing over and over again. And what we did differently this time was we treated this project recap as if it were a campaign. So instead of posting about it once and being like, ta-da, here's the new branding, we teased it and then dropped it as if it were its own like 2-week sprint on our social media. So internally, we're calling this like a content flood. And what it looks like is this. The first post that kind of builds up to this is this mood board montage, right? Super aesthetic, super engaging as far as setting the tone for what that rebrand is going to look like. So we used a lot of the stock imagery, stock video, and we listed out like the adjectives of the rebrand into the reel, set it to music that fits the brand, etc. The next post that we had was kind of what we call a like logo flash on, which is the logo on different textures, items, backgrounds, etc. That is the pseudo teaser of what is to come in the branding. So that posted really well because it kind of like is that really satisfying slow zoom in, slow zoom out that gets you interested, but it's not so much educating you on what the rebranding was and why. Whereas the next post and the posts that do super, super well for us course, on social media are like the continuous scroll carousels. So what we did is we took the best mock-ups from the project and really laid them out in a beautiful carousel and told people to go to the website. So I think one of the first things you can do when you're starting to share your work is remember to always send people to the long form version of that content. So for us, that means sending them to our website where they can see the 12-minute video that we sent the client that really describes and explains all the design decisions that we made in their project that fit their goals. So in this caption and in the carousel graphic, this is like now the third one in the series, we have a really in-depth write-up of what we were able to do and where you can go see more. So it was really important for us to point not only to our website, but to point to that client's socials. So you'll see that as the last slide in the carousel, as well as mentioned in the caption. The other thing that we did on a lot of these posts was invite the client as a collaborator. We're finding that a lot of times like clients are so excited about their branding and then it gets to social media and they like don't know how to post about it. Like they don't know what to say or how to pull it together. And so on all of these, we pretty much invited the client to be a collaborative poster on all of them, knowing that the people that follow our client might also need the services that we provide. Now, that did cause a little bit of a trickle effect in how we wrote the copy. So the copywriting is very omnipresent for both brands. So for example, the caption in this post is checking in right this way. Piano Chi welcomes you with a spritz on the terrace and aperitivo meeting that turns strangers into good friends. Helping families find solutions for their vacation villas is what Piano Chi does best. From renovations to rentals, concierge services to keeping clients up to date on the latest Airbnb legalities, Piano Chi Property Management is the go-to for blending heritage homes with modern convenience. And now they have branding to match. So the messaging and the tone of the caption serves both brands. And that was intentional because I didn't want the client to be invited as a collaborator for then the point of view of the caption to be like, look what we did, all new logos, like we designed, because the client didn't design it, like our agency designed it. So being transparent about that from the jump, I think really helps. So considering again, your rollout of a new client's brand as like portfolio for you and also content for them served us really well. And I think this is something you can totally replicate on your own side of things. The next kind of chunk of content that we have in this content flood is based on how our team uses new tech in our process. So a lot of the teaser content and the process content of this project was centered around AI and how we were using AI to fill in the gaps of brand photography that the client didn't have yet. So like an HQ office or a meeting scene or a construction walkthrough or a renovations truck or welcome kit guide, right? Like they didn't have that imagery yet. So we were able to use the brand questionnaire and the brand styles with ChatGPT, Midjourney, AI. Definitely go back to the AI episode and take a listen to that. But we were able to do that in a way that we can create content out of that alone. So again, that next reel on the page is about how we took some of the AI imagery and animated it into video. And that was also we invited the client to collaborate on that post. Again, benefits the client that they're partnering with an agency like ours that is using like top of the line tool, top of the line technology to really elevate the brand experience and paint the picture for the ideal client. Win-win, right? The other pieces of content around AI were carousels that we pulled together that we did not invite the client to. So there was a carousel that we created called Rebranding, crossed out, says World Building with AI content. And this carousel is essentially a blog post case study for how you can use AI as a branding person. This was our top performing post of this entire campaign, so to speak, this entire sweep, because it was educational for not only our audience, but also for fellow designers. And it really showcased how diligently we were using the tools in the project and how that elevated what we were bringing to the table. So this was definitely the most saved, most shared piece of content and something that we will absolutely be replicating in future pieces, but wasn't as appropriate to invite the client to because it was more behind the curtain style content. And I think that's a good piece of content to have regardless, right? Like when you're thinking about sharing your work and you're thinking about sharing work in a way that's going to really pop off on social, I know I've said this a bajillion, cajillion times. Your number one job as a service provider is to show people how you solved their problem by documenting the process, by showing them This was your problem. This is what we came forward with as a solution. And here were the results, right? And that's really evident in our carousel, our like rebranding carousel. So we have a template that we use. We create it in Canva and then we splice it up. It's 10 slides. It's a client case study carousel. And it starts always, first page is like brand color with brand logo. And in that, it kind of charts you through what's in the eventual brand guides by like mood board color palette, old logo, new logos, mock-ups, etc. At this point, people have already seen a lot of this a lot of times, call to action at the end. But what I did differently this go around is on slide 3, where we see the old logo, I actually took it over into my iPad and sketched over top of it the things that we knew we wanted to change. So these were all coming up in conversations with the client. This was part of the brand experience of hiring our team, was taking a look at like, okay, what branding do you have now? And why is or isn't it working for you? And I think showcasing that on a slide standalone was really helpful, right? Because it kind of showcased what that transformation was besides just the, okay, it looks nicer or it looks more modern or it looks more current. It's like, how was this non-functional? And then how did we add function in the rebrand? So that great piece of content as far as summarizing like how we created those visuals. That same sentiment, that same message is coming through in the video where it looks like it's just my laptop open on the counter. These are our signature brand design in 60 seconds videos. These are what helped us pop off on TikTok. Anytime that you can create a series, it's a good idea on your socials so people can come back to it and come back to a consistency. And in that video, we're really recapping the whole project start to finish in under a minute. So really, again, painting the picture for what it's like to work with us. This was a piece of content that we did post collaboratively with the client because it kind of explains the methodology of why they needed new branding and what that new look was going to be and how it was going to be rolled out, which is also useful. Sometimes clients don't know how to pull that all together, but it kind of piggybacks on that piece of content, which was the continuous branding carousel, which got posted a few days later, right? The other piece of content that was a really good collaborative share effort was a carousel that we put together that educates the same audience that the client serves. So for example, the title of this carousel is Branding Advice for Creating a Curated Experience at Your Luxury Airbnb. This client helps property manage luxury Airbnbs. So this was a piece of educational content that could have lived on the client's page standalone that instead is coming from us because we did the branding and is educating both our audience and their audience. So in this carousel, we have multiple slides and it really breaks down all of the different ways that we thought to incorporate branding to serve the end user of our client. So to serve the person who owns the Airbnb, this carousel is really one of the things that they could save, they could send to a friend, they could share it, but the purpose was to be educational for both audiences. And that's a great way to continue to grow your socials, to pop off, to really attract that new audience and showcase your work because you're serving multiple audiences. So if we were to do this again, for example, maybe I would consider doing it for like let's say like hair salon. Right? We're not working with any hair salons, but let's say we could create a carousel that would be about color theory and neutral skin tones and hair color and how color theory impacts our perception of someone or something. So the educational carousel, and believe me, we use ChatGPT to help write a lot of the copy on here, or at least suggest the outline of the copy. But the idea would be create content for yourself that also educates the audience of your client so you can post collaboratively and make something worth sharing, worth saving. So in this carousel, like I said, the topic was how to elevate your Airbnb experience. We talked about how having good social media, having good branded moments like a canvas tote bag and robes and wine bottles and all of those things like help elevate the experience towards more of like a luxury hotel instead of just like staying in someone's house. So again, another piece of content that really bridges the gap between what we offer and what the client offers. And all of these, by the way, are getting posted back to back to back to back to back. There is no content really in between any of these pieces of content that's not related to this project. The benefit here is the aesthetics of this project were very similar to the MKW Creative Co brand aesthetic. There's a lot of synergy happening. But I think even when we do this for other clients, there's enough common thread between our brand and their brand that we can kind of chameleon around to really dedicate a lot of our social media feed to really honing in on that one project as a case study. And it is so satisfying to scroll back and see that flood to be able to go back and like look at all of those images together and like really be like, oh, this feels like a moment. And now our goal with social media is that we're going to do this more regularly. So like once every month or every 6 weeks that we spend like a good chunk of posts dedicated only to one specific project, especially if they are those keystone projects. And that in the in-between, we're slotting in our evergreen stuff. So we're talking about the podcast, we're talking about the Facebook group, we're adding in testimonials or like our monthly reports or things like that that are kind of our standalone evergreen topics, are supplementing that big flood of portfolio work. So instead of just, here's the final project, ta-da, creating some more texture, creating some more history, some more context behind why we did what we did and how it benefits not only the client, but anybody else who's following us was the big goal of like that big flood on social media of just all one project. Another piece of content that we wiggled in here were things that we do for fun that are also part educational, which are the animated GIFs. And at the end of the carousel, and I've noticed this a lot on social media, it's about kind of like adding in a tutorial at the end of your carousel is kind of a sneaky way to get some more engagement. So if you put in your caption, like scroll to the end for a video tutorial on how we did this, instead of just having that as a standalone piece of content, if you put it in your carousel, it creates an incentive for someone to stick around longer, to like scroll all the way through, to see everything that you made, to see what you have to show, and then arrive at the thing that they want. So try that on your social media as well. Like, can you bury the juicy nugget towards the end of a carousel as a way to encourage someone to do a deeper dive on your stuff? We really rounded out this campaign flood with clips from the podcast. So great timing on my part, pat myself on the back, is that I had my friend Lauren, who happened to be on the birthday trip with me, specifically talk about her experience as a travel blogger staying at one of their properties. And so we took the audio, we stripped the audio from that episode and added it to the photo and video that we took while we were there, where she's really talking about the experience of the brand, right? So again, this was a piece of content that killed for Piano Chi, for their property management site, because it's essentially like a long form 2-person testimonial. And the text overlay, these were all the pieces of the brand that came through in the branding. So we talked about how the experience like felt as a user, and then also like how in the caption we explained how we took that experience and made that a part of the brand story, made that a part of the rebrand, the brand visuals, right? So again, another way to kind of create more context, create more story is if you have a portfolio piece, can you interview the client? Can you interview a past customer? Can you get some kind of long form testimonial where you can assign visuals to the words that they're saying in an on-brand way that gives that authenticity and that context to the design work that you did? Would be another way to kind of pop that back up into the conversation. So that pretty much covers what we were able to do with social. Like I said, this is a new method for us. But I think even if we're scrolling back through our projects, I mean, there's hints of how we've done this before, right? So when we were talking about like Dental Hygiene Nation with their Olympics, aesthetic, we have like a reel and 2 carousel covers that are all kind of fitting the same look. When we go back to like FRG, when we were talking about that, or the podcast, like having consistency in your graphics so that people know what to expect also allows them to seek out the type of content that they need, right? Like someone may be way more interested in my branding carousels than they are podcast episodes. So by having that contrast in the content, they can go seek what they want out of it quicker, right? So this kind of is an overview. Again, it's a new process for us. It's something that we're trying out. We've got one under our belt so far and it seems to work well. But literally go back onto the Instagram and look at those 12 to 15 posts that were related to that project specifically. If you're feeling like, I don't know how to talk about my projects or I don't know how to share about my work, I think, again, big takeaways are what are pieces of content that you can post collaboratively with your client because it helps them too? How can you document or showcase your process and what you're able to do? How can you show the project by way of talking about it in the context of a tool or a skill set that you've evolved or that you've grown recently? Because then that gives it a little bit more oomph. And then how can you take something like a podcast or a TikTok video or a YouTube live stream and take the audio out, but then put the visuals of that project? Make sense? I think that should do it, guys. If this was helpful to you, please share, save, send to a friend, write us a review. We would love that. And if you have an idea for a podcast episode, please email it to podcast@mkwcreative.co. You're all invited to join the Facebook group, Kiss My Aesthetic. It is free and it is so worth it because there are anywhere from like 10 to 15 different job opportunities getting posted in that group every week. Like they are flying so fast. So come join us over there and have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time. Bye.